of Natural Resources. I'm really happy that we are having our lunch demonstration with Monica Alvarado and Casey Chapman. If you haven't been to Bread and Butter Kitchen yet, be sure to check it out. They have great locally sourced food, a friendly staff, and you can even sit outdoors on the water in Eastport. Let me tell you a little bit about Monica. In 2012, after working tirelessly for 20 years in technology, Monica took a brief sabbatical from the corporate world. And it was during this time that she rediscovered her passion for cooking and started a blog that was focused on making delicious food using local ingredients. The blog provided an outlet for her to share her recipes, as well as to interview local farmers and vendors in the Annapolis area. Over time, she realized that the time she spent in the kitchen was much more fulfilling than the time she spent in boardrooms. She's a reformed corporate rock star, an Air Force veteran. Monica left her 22-year career in technology and in 2016 started Bread and Butter Kitchen with the vision of sharing her passion for making amazing food that celebrates local ingredients. She works closely with local farmers and vendors to source the best ingredients available, and she and her amazing team serve up great food 7 days a week. Monica was also awarded the inaugural Annapolis Person of the Year Award for 2020. This well-deserved award was in recognition of her leading Feed Anne Arundel, a charitable organization that keeps restaurants in business and their workers employed by paying them to make hot meals for families in need. These meals are handed out at food distribution centers across the county. Congratulations, Monica.
Thank you.
I also want to introduce Casey Chapman. Casey's the food service coordinator for Mom's Organic Market. He runs 13 organic restaurants and 4 organic bakeries and oversees an organic coffee roastery and coordinates organic bread shipments for private label breads. He also enjoys spending time with his 8-year-old son, but surprisingly, he's not the biggest Minecraft fan, and he's also a new resident of Baltimore City. So with that, I'm going to kick it back to you guys.
Well, hello. Hi, Casey. Hi, Amy.
Hi, Monica. Good to see you.
So I'm going to dive in because I know we have a short amount of time. Today, we're going to be making lion's mane crab cakes. And so this is a vegetarian version is what I'll be making, but you can make a vegan version. It's in the recipe, and I'm happy to answer questions about that as well. But essentially, we're just going to start by taking our lion's mane. If you are familiar with the lion's mane mushroom, so you can get them at some of our grocery stores. Does Mom's carry them, Casey?
Mom's carries lion's mane, absolutely.
Of course you do. Of course you do. Right? These mushrooms are amazing. The texture is amazing. The flavor is amazing. In fact, when I first started, I'm going to start shredding this. So if you're going to be cooking along with me, we're just going to shred. I'm just going to cut off this tiny little piece that was connected to where it started to grow. And we're just going to shred our mushrooms like you would crabs, I guess, right? So that they pull apart really easily, and just shred them into pieces like you would about the size of like a piece of crab. So as we go here. Lion's mane, Casey, you probably know this, but they're really, really good for you. They're good for your brain, among other things, high in antioxidants, anti-inflammatories. What am I missing, Casey?
No, you hit antioxidants. They're really good immune boosters. I think lion's mane is one of my favorites for immune boosters, and it's often used actually to make coffee substitutes.
I did not know that.
As a thing that can give energy and has that kind of depth of flavor that you tend to lose when people go with just straight chicory or something along those lines. So the juice from cooking off and roasting can be awesome. So did you pick lion's mane? So yeah, lion's mane is one of my favorite things to cook with because I'm a big fan of the texture of it, like you mentioned.
Yes.
And so you can smoke it and have it make a faux pulled pork. You can make crab cakes, as everybody is about to see with it. So,
well, and it's got like when you start cooking it, I feel like the flavor, like you can eat it raw, obviously, but I feel like when you start cooking it, and many people talk about this, is it actually releases this flavor and it almost similar to lobster or crab. It's very sweet, which is why it's a fan for seafood dishes as well. In fact, when I first started Bread and Butter Kitchen, I made meals for a local vegan restaurant, and I made this Thai wild mushroom bowl, and I had all these different mushrooms, including lion's mane. And I remember getting a phone call from the owners. Somebody had eaten it and returned it because they were sure, they were absolutely positive that was meat or crab meat or lobster, that I had used seafood broth. And I'm like, nope, all vegan. So it can trick you, especially because the texture does resemble, it's a little firmer.
Yeah,
So,
and especially once you cook it, it starts to get a little more chew to it than most mushrooms do. That's the other thing I really like, is that, it doesn't do, I call it the mushroom bend when I'm dealing with like portobellos and things, where it becomes a floppy mess that drips and stains everything, whereas lion's mane holds up really well.
It will convert a mushroom hater for sure. You just don't tell them. Just don't tell them. That's what I do. Trick them all.
You can't tell people anything. Nobody likes cauliflower either, right? Until you roast it the right way.
Exactly. It's all about how you cook it, guys.
Yeah. Well, I think that using the lion's mane too, because it's a pretty abundant mushroom. So one of the things that's interesting to me is that I love that you're using it, because it shows how easy it is to use something that's readily available. It's not like a high-end, people treat it like one, but
yeah, and it just shreds so easily. It's just wonderful. And these mushrooms today came from Windermere Farms, from Andy and Stacy, and they are amazing. They're actually at the Anne Arundel County Food Bank. You can see where my brain usually is. Anne Arundel County Farmers Market every Sunday. So, okay, so lion's mane shredded. I'm going to start chopping up some onions while we talk, Casey.
Excellent. So while you're chopping up your onion, I was really curious, because you and I talked the other day. So I'm going to kind of background this a little bit. We talked about the idea that restaurants used to be community centers and community based. Is where everything happened. You go there to celebrate getting engaged. You go there to drown your sorrows when you break up. It's always there for the community, and that has been lost a lot. And so with the advent of chain restaurants and a lot of other things. And so what I'm curious about is when you got ready to open Bread and Butter Kitchen, you very much went after it as a community piece, not as a restaurant. Can you talk a little about the inspiration for that? Tell us where.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So with my restaurant, it's actually nestled in this little office building within Eastport. So Eastport is very much a neighborhood on the other side of the water in Annapolis. So we can see the Naval Academy from our windows and from the water. We're just doing a quarter cup of onions here. So I'm just going to roughly chop them and then mince them down a little bit more. But yeah, for me, it's a very small restaurant. It's 800 square feet. I can only have a total of 10 people inside. And I think that includes my chef and other people, but don't tell anybody, because I have to have 14 or 15 to keep up with the lines, which is a great thing. So it's really small. Most of our seating is outside, which is awesome. But for me, I just knew that even though we'd have a lot of tourists in the summer, and that's a big business in Annapolis, but my location is a little off the beaten path. You really have to search me out or be in the neighborhood. So for me, I really wanted it to be a local community hub, a place where people came and got their morning coffee, came on weekends for a leisurely breakfast, maybe picked up lunch for their kids on the way to school. That was really, really important for me. And then I have a clear focus in our mission of giving back to the community. And so that is something we started doing right away, is making sure that we were engaged and helping people in the community wherever possible. So yeah, I think, Casey, for me too, the pandemic is really where this idea of restaurants being a center of the community really started to be more obvious, right? More important than ever.
Yeah. I love the way you grabbed leadership on that with the pandemic starting, and kind of grew out the spread the love of how you could get things from one place to another, because a lot of times we have a tendency to think really, especially in restaurants, and I know I'm speaking specifically about myself, to think of things as very linear. You know, there's a product, it goes where it gets made into something, and then it gets bought by somebody else. But you looked at it at the beginning of the pandemic as something that could become lateral. So somebody could pay for something that would then go to somebody else. It became a whole gift. And I'm not doubting, but how did you get, because that happened very quickly at the beginning of the pandemic. So it had to be something that was stewing in your mind before that. I have a hard time accepting that you woke up on March 12th and went, you know what we're going to do?
You know, you're right. So it's interesting is that the idea for Feed Anne Arundel was something that came from a relationship that I built over the years with one of my customers. His name is Ryan Sermons. And he is actually the lead organizer for an organization called ACT, Anne Arundel Connecting Together. Now, ACT is, I didn't know this at the time. I knew that he had a lot of business meetings. I'm going to start chopping some parsley as well. We love fresh parsley in these. I didn't know at the time that he was this lead organizer of ACT. I didn't know what ACT was. But we talked a lot about food insecurity. We shared an interest in the work that Jose Andres had done in Puerto Rico. My husband is Puerto Rican, and Ryan had done like a summer in Puerto Rico trying to expand his Spanish. So we had some conversations about that previously, and he was aware I had a program at my restaurant that I started with another customer, Joseph Porcelli from Nextdoor, is an app called Nextdoor, called Feed It Forward, where customers can come into my restaurant, buy a gift card for Bread and Butter Kitchen, and then we distribute those to people in need, whether they come in and need a meal or we partner with our local schools, Office of Emergency Management, some police, etc. So if they see somebody in need, they can give them a gift card. They walk in, there's no dignity issues. They just walk in and buy something with a gift card. So really straightforward. So he was aware of that. And so he called me. Actually, I think he Facebook messaged me because he didn't have my phone number at the time on a Tuesday in March and said, well, what do you think if restaurants found a way to help this food insecurity crisis? Now, truth be told, I was a little bit more focused on the fact that my restaurant wasn't going to make it. At the beginning of the pandemic, we were all kind of looking around going, oh gosh, what does this mean for us? So when he called and asked me that question, I said, I would love to do the Jose Andres model, but we really need to make sure that we're paying local restaurants. Like we have to find a way to raise money and pay restaurants to do this and to make individually packaged meals that we can distribute. And that was on Tuesday. By the end of the week, I had a GoFundMe set up, a Facebook page, and I had enlisted at least 6 restaurants and had calls out to all the chambers of commerce, trying to get as many restaurants around the county as possible. And so by Saturday, we did our first delivery of 400 meals to a church in Deal in South County. And a big part of that, and a part of the conversation with Ryan that was so valuable is because of his relationship with ACT. Because they are so engaged in social justice issues, they had enough connections in the county to ensure that we could partner with the food bank, we could partner with the Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families. And that was important because they were already engaged with all the food distributions. They already had those logistics figured out. So I didn't have to reinvent the wheel. We just had to get food from the restaurants to these locations to be distributed. And so I could handle that part. He connected me to the partnership, and as they say, you know, one thing led to another, and voila. We got, we're still going. We have, we've given out 160,000 meals, and yeah, and that's over $1.5 million that's gone right back into the hands of local restaurant owners, which meant they could keep their doors open. And if they were making food for me, they could make food for customers. They could pay their staff. They could pay farmers and watermen, and activate that entire supply chain of delivery drivers, warehouse workers, everybody. So it was a really powerful program, one that our local county executive and his team understood the value of immediately. They gave us money from the CARES Act, which was great, and lots of private donations as well. So I'm just gonna pour my parsley right into this bowl with my onions. Talk about Feed Anne Arundel all day, Casey.
I love it. I want to hear everything. So, but a quick question. So you have your onions, your mushrooms, and your parsley in the bowl right now, right?
So I've got the mushrooms separate right now. And so I've got the onions. I'm going to go ahead and combine the onions, the parsley, the egg. we're going to put some Worcestershire sauce in. Normally I measure, I never measure. I eyeball it, but the recipe calls for, let me look, a teaspoon. I like a little bit extra. We're also going to add some Old Bay, some mayonnaise, Dijon, and salt and pepper, and then mix it all together. So I'm just going to continue doing that. Oh, and a half a cup of breadcrumbs. I use panko, but if you're gluten-free, you can certainly use gluten-free breadcrumbs. It really doesn't matter. I like panko because the texture is a little bit better.
That is, sorry, I was totally distracted by the food.
I mean, I get it. Me too. That's usually my situation.
I'm that guy who could watch a cooking show with the sound off because it's just always fun. Like, how does she chop? How do they mix?
Yeah,
oh,
of course.
They measure like I do. That was way more than a teaspoon.
Definitely. I am, and this is a tablespoon of mayonnaise. You can use vegan mayo as well. Also, in place of the egg, again, I didn't measure, but that's like about a tablespoon. I don't measure very often, just from practice, I guess. When I'm doing savory dishes, it's not as critical, obviously, as when you're baking something where you kind of need things to not be out of whack. And then we're just going to do a teaspoon or one little squirt of Dijon, and that's to taste. Obviously, it adds a little zip, some salt and some pepper. And then we're going to mix this all together and then toss it with the mushrooms. So if you are vegan, and I'm sure most vegans already know this, but the flax egg can be made or can be used in place of the actual egg here. And to make a flax egg, it's really simple. It's 1 tablespoon of flax meal. So you can take, where are they? So I have flax seeds. You can take these and put them in a spice grinder until it's meal, or you can buy it until it's like powdery, or you can buy it already in a meal form, and just mix 1 tablespoon with about 2.5 tablespoons of water. Mix it together and let it sit for about 5 minutes. It'll thicken up, and that can be used in place, because really the egg here is a binder. It's really just going to help us hold everything together when we put the mushrooms in. All right.
Well, not to take away anything, but just a quick side note. I have found that grinding your own flax seeds makes for a much better egg. So yes, for everybody out there, because they put, when you buy the meal, they put stuff in it so that it won't cake. It is specifically made not to stick together, and you need that congealing to get an egg.
I'm so glad you shared that, because it's always been such a confounding situation for me, because I don't keep flax meal at home, but when I do vegan recipes at the restaurant, I'll grab it just for ease of use. So I'm glad you shared that with me. It's going to make tomorrow's special, which is lion's mane crab cakes at the restaurant, all that much better.
Well, be ready, because me and everybody else on the call are all going to be there tomorrow to compare ours to yours.
That sounds great. That sounds great. We'll have a big crab cake party, and we'll tell everybody it's not vegan and see what we can do. Get some people switched over. So I've mixed everything together. Now I'm going to just hand toss the mushrooms in with this mixture, and then we'll form some crab cakes. This is super easy. This is like a 15-minute dinner, really. You can pair it with a salad. You can make a sandwich while it's cooking. I'm going to put together some of that tartar sauce, a quick tartar. And then it's like the perfect fast evening, very healthy meal, even if you're doing it with crab and not mushrooms. Still very yummy. Just a little more expensive with the crab, especially right now.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to form these together. Let me see. So this is what it's looking like right now, okay? You can see if you bind it together, it stays very nicely. So I'm just going to form some patties with my hand, just like you would a meatball, a little circle, and press it down. You can make them as big or as small as you want. I'm going to make a few of these. Casey, the whole concept of communities as a restaurant, the Feed and Arundel really helped highlight that for me, right? The necessary component of restaurants and communities, whether you're talking about restaurants being a place for celebrations or parties, or maybe it's somewhere where you go to break up with somebody, I don't know. But they always play kind of an integral part in big moments. And it's similar to your home, right? When you have a party, the place everybody is the kitchen. There's something about being able to share a meal and chat and talk over that that's really special. And I think like for us during the pandemic, it became so much more than that, because each restaurant that participated had an opportunity to be out on the line handing these meals out, or engaging with some of these local churches. I'm just going to wash my hands. And really start to see how restaurants play such an important role. We were kind of the glue holding it together. And even when we started to reopen, people came back and they were excited just to be around even other people, even if they had their mask on and had to be outside in the frigid cold. They were just glad to be there. And so we have started really looking at that and trying to figure out how can we continue Feed Anne Arundel in a non-chaotic way. We're starting to look at, and I'm just going to preheat my stove here. So if you're going to cook these on a stove, I have a gas burner. We used to have electric. You're just going to want to preheat it for a minute or two to get the pan a little bit hot. So we're going to do that while we talk. And got 4.5 crab cakes we're going to make. But so we're starting to look at different ways. How can restaurants really engage and connect with other, with the community in a broader sense, right? So we're definitely a meeting place, but my restaurant, we just started a garden this spring. And the idea of the garden is really obviously to help us grow food locally, but also I'm like, oh, why do I smell gas? It didn't light.
This could have become the most exciting
just
video.
Call 911. I know, it's going to go viral. Chef blows up house. But it was worth it for the crab cakes. But yeah, so
really
we started a community garden. I mean, yeah, it would not be the first time, truth be told, that I've set this kitchen on fire, if we're being honest. So we started a community garden at the restaurant. The idea is very simple, right? We are going to have a little stand built so people can grab any produce that they need that we have excess of. We'll use that both in the meals that we prepare for Feed Anne Arundel as well as at our own restaurant. So, you know, that's a big part of it. The other piece that we're looking at is partnering. We've partnered now with the health department as well as the school system and the Anne Arundel County Food Bank with the idea of putting nutritionally forward meals together, right? No processed food, trying to encourage our restaurants to do their part and putting together really healthy, delicious meals like this. And packaging them and putting them in refrigerators in different locations around the county, like senior centers, libraries, schools, community centers. So again, we're really interested in maintaining dignity of people who are in need of a good meal. We want to provide them with a nutritionally sound meal that's also amazing and delicious, and just allow them to be able to go and grab something if they need it. The food bank's going to partner with us, some of the other community gardens as well, to add fresh produce to those refrigerators so people can grab stuff to make their own food. So there's a lot in the works right now as to figuring out how restaurants can continue to play an important role in the community.
So what do you think? Do you think it was the pandemic, or do you think it was natural for a lot of the restaurants that you guys reached out to kind of establish themselves that way as kind of an integral part of this program, right? Like if I were to call somebody in 2018 at Cheesecake Factory and say, hey, let's do this thing. Like, do you think it's mostly local restaurants that would be, I guess my question is, do you think without COVID, people would have been as into this idea? And then follow on to that, do you think it's the kind of thing that will continue to grow that way and can spread?
So I will say we had a nice combination. We still have a nice combination. And by the way, I've got the oil in here. It's sizzling a little bit. So I'm just going to put these crab cakes in and let them start to brown. I turn the heat down a little bit so they don't burn too quickly. But yeah, so to answer your question, Casey, we did have a lot of different restaurants. We have Pizza Bowlies. We have the Chart House. We definitely have like chain restaurants like Nando's. And then we have, lots and lots of independent restaurants as well. And most recently, because we are still going right now with the food distributions, we're about to resume. Just rinse my hands real quick, sorry. One of the things I ask the restaurants is to really start to consider how they want to continue partnering. If they're interested in doing the refrigerator piece, would they be willing to stick to these nutritional guidelines? Like, that's really important to me as we move forward, because a lot of the places we want to put these refrigerators are going to be in food deserts. Even Eastport, where my restaurant is really a food desert. You have to go like a 10-minute drive from my restaurant to get to the local grocery store. So you can't really walk to it very quickly. So these are important things for us. A lot of restaurants are starting to respond. Many want to continue. Some are getting too busy. So I really think, like, before the pandemic, I don't know. I think I would have been able to get a lot of the local restaurants a little bit more engaged, involved. Yeah. But I feel good about the sense that so many are asking to continue, or to keep them in mind. They may not be able to participate every week, depending on what's going on at their restaurant and staffing, of course, and catering orders and all the things that we face. But yeah, I do think that for the most part, the restaurants that participated found themselves getting more out of it than what they were giving. And, you know, just to be clear, like, we didn't ask them to donate, right? We're paying $10 to $11 for each individual meal, which is intended to allow them to eke out some profit and cover their overhead, and provide good quality ingredients. And for family style meals for 6 people, we pay $50, which is easy enough to pull together if you know how to handle your food costs. So, you know, it wasn't a charity as much. And so, like, I really do think the restaurants that have participated so far, we've got over 75 now, have been getting more out of it than maybe putting into it. If that makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah. So, yeah, I just love the idea of that as a leading edge and building, you know, it is kind of the capitalist ideal towards food sovereignty, right? But I want to circle back a little bit, because you mentioned, you know, that being in a food desert, and that's, you know, a phrase we talked about a little bit that I don't really care for that phrase that much, because I see it more as kind of a food apartheid. That, you know, people don't, they're so convinced that people won't buy things in certain areas, or they don't want to eat certain things. And that's why
that's not it.
That's not it at all. You know, just to sound my own company's horn a little bit. I mean, we went into Ivy City in DC 7 years ago, and nobody would shop organic, right? And we're still there with a vegetarian restaurant and doing well. And so all of that is to preface the trick question that to make you think on your feet a little bit.
I'll take it.
Because you have the community garden, you're going to have a lot of that out there, and that's going to start offering a lot of access. If I understand correctly, it's almost like a little free library, but with nutritious meals.
Exactly. Right? That's the goal. Yep.
So with that, then you will start to see that the demand is there. Right? Is that kind of a long-term goal, to be able to bust down the walls of capitalist goals that keep it out? This idea that it won't sell because people don't want it, as opposed to they don't buy it because it's not there.
Yeah, and honestly, like, it's what's interesting about Eastport. So yes, I think the first goal is getting the product in front of people so they have access to it, they can try it. There's a pantry in Brooklyn Park called the Brooklyn Park Healthy Pantry. And that pantry, in addition to providing food distributions each week, before COVID, they were doing cooking demos and trying new ingredients that people may not have had, or something that came from the food bank that they're like, what do we do with this? To really start to demonstrate that. And that became a really popular thing. And so I think it is access. It's access and understanding. And in Eastport, we had Rite Aid, which, believe it or not, used to carry organic ingredients and organic things for the local folks to get. And now it's been replaced by a Walgreens, and all of that's gone. And people are like, what are we going to do? Where do we go? Right? We have a produce stand, but when you want, like, organic eggs, organic milk, things like that to provide to your family, you have to, again, schlep another, 10-minute drive, or gosh, if it's walking, I can't even imagine, it's probably 20 to 30 minutes, and then carry all that back. So it is really about access. And I agree with you. I think you're right. It's not about a food desert. It is food apartheid. And I think I just read a study about that just the other day. And just talking about the fact that there is this misnomer that people wouldn't use it, they don't want it, they just want processed food. That's just not the case. In fact, I find more and more people coming into the restaurant because they've heard that we have vegan, because they know that we're cooking from scratch. They want plant-based. They're educating themselves, and one lady, like her doctor sent her, was like, you need to start eating this type of food, slow food. And it's not to say that I'm innocent, right? Our restaurant certainly has cheesesteaks on the menu. But we also have a vegan cheesesteak.
Yeah. So, well, I don't think any of us want to live in a world where we can't get either a regular cheesesteak or a vegan cheesesteak. That's the real mission.
Exactly. So I'm like, can I have a choice?
So to continue putting you on the hot seat, because that's what I decided to do a minute ago.
And then, I love it.
So I love the restaurants, and the reason I was leading into wondering about the local versus chains is with the kind of locavore movement that started back in the 80s, really started, reemerged is probably a better word. Is this idea that one of the things that it feels like you're demonstrating with Feed Anne Arundel is that people also like those foods. And that you can influence where restaurants are buying and where they're getting their things. So by having a community garden and using it, you demonstrate the need for a community garden and show how that can impact the restaurants, which impacts the community. You and I touched on that a little bit. What I'm wondering is, was that a part of your kind of, we had gone all the way back to 2016 talking about the idea of how you could provide meals. Was all of this part of a long-term plan, or is it kind of just becoming a natural outgrowth of what you were already doing?
So it's a combination of the two, right? So when I started Bread and Butter Kitchen, I was at the farmers market, right? I was working with the farmers, making meals and selling them from my coolers to go, right? And I had no plans of ever opening a restaurant. So when this kind of literally fell in my lap and I was like, yeah, this is perfect, I'll do this now. I didn't really have a good concept of what, other than wanting to continue what I was already doing. I already had followers who loved the food that was being made. I knew there was a market for it. So it was really an opportunity for me to kind of see if it would transition to a restaurant setting and if it was something I could afford to do, because it is an excess cost, right? There is extra cost to cooking from scratch, both in labor and food, especially for choosing really good ingredients, which we try to do. Except for the cheesesteak. Listen, those are frozen strips, guys. I'm sorry. People like them. I can't take them off the menu. I cannot take them off the menu.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have learned today that Monica sets her kitchen on fire and uses frozen cheesesteak meat. So
it's true.
I think we're done here.
I own it. I'll own it. Now I go viral and they're like, what? Frozen cheesesteak? I thought this was like Philadelphia. No.
Yeah.
So no, you're good. No, it's true, right? So those are compromises I have had to make, honestly, right? So when I opened the restaurant, I ate my way through the menu before I changed anything, and I started introducing specials with my menu, right? Like the banh mi burger, which is with ground turkey, and it's delicious and it's different. Things like that we started adding to the menu, and now there are some holdovers, like those damn cheesesteaks that won't go away. That I cannot get rid of. Same with the gyros. I mean, come on, guys. They're strips, but people love them. So I can't take certain things off the menu just because this restaurant has been in the community for 20 some odd years, and different owners, different variations, and there are certain things that just held over. So listen to your customers. That's what I do. But like I said, we didn't have vegan or vegetarian options naturally on the menu. And over the last 2.5 years, I'd say we've started really looking and pushing, and that's me personally wanting to do that. It's something that is how I want to eat. It's how I want my family to eat, and just not necessarily vegan, but certainly more plant forward, more plants on the plate than meat. And if it is meat, let's get it from a local farmer when we know where it came from. So I don't know if I answered your question. I feel like I danced around it.
That's okay. I forgot what I asked. So I got you had me in there. So I moved into your life. So we're starting to run short a little bit on time. I want to make sure everybody gets their tartar sauce. So I'm going to stop distracting you for a minute.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the two prettiest crab cakes out because let's be honest, look what happened. I wasn't paying attention. But even though these parts are still delicious. So for the tartar sauce, it's really, really simple. It's just mayonnaise. Again, you can use vegan mayo. I chopped up some pickles that I had. Fun fact, my refrigerator died last weekend, and so the refrigerators I made are gone. Everything's gone. I'm starting with a whole new refrigerator. So it's just chopped up pickles, mayonnaise, a little Old Bay. You can squirt some lemon juice in there if you want. I just put it all together, mixed it all together, and I should really taste it. Yeah, it's tartar sauce. And so, yeah, so here we are. Crab cakes with lion's mane. They look like crab cakes. I'm excited to hear, I don't know who's cooking along with us. I know Amy was. How they taste in comparison. I wish I could share them with you, Casey.
Oh, I wasn't kidding when I said I'm going to be there tomorrow. So.
Oh, good. We can hang out and we can talk about you opening a mom's market in Eastport.
Yeah, why not? So, I wanted to hit on something that's kind of funny. This was a debate that I was having with some friends the other day. I was talking about the plant forward as opposed to fully plant-based. One of the fascinating things about America is that the one carryover from our old meat eating ways is breakfast. Breakfast is the only meal of the day where we order meat as a side, and your main dish is what would be a side order the rest of the day. And so I've been telling people that one of the goals is to kind of get back to breakfast for dinner. But it doesn't have to be breakfast foods, but just approaching it the same way. Here are all the nutrients I need, and here's this delicious piece of thick cut Newski's bacon that I'm giving myself as a treat and palate cleanser. Right? I think it's a fun way to think about how people go forward.
That is really a really good point. Actually, I love that. I love that so much. That's spot on. So there you go, guys. We have our vegan lion's mane crab cakes. Actually, they're vegetarian because I used real mayo and an egg, and they taste great. If you're eating along with me, they're really good. I think they would fool your friends. I'm not gonna lie. I'm pretty sure they would fool a friend. You're like, this crab tastes different, a little bit different, but it's delicious.
And the best part is no shells. You're not going to get that sudden between the tooth surprise.
Now I feel like I should come up with a way to make it feel like there's a shell in there.
Yeah, you could just craft little shells out of, I don't even know what you would use, recycled Coke cans.
There you go. Thank you so much, Casey. This has been really fun. I don't know if we had any questions in chat. I've just been chatting.
I was just going to ask if anybody, because we have a few minutes left, so I've got chat open up if anybody has questions they'd like to ask or dive more into the dish or anything else that we've talked about, or even get information of how you can reach out and bug Monica to take the roadmap that she's used for Feed Anne Arundel and start to bring it to your own communities so that your restaurants can become kind of the community leaders that Monica and I seem to agree restaurants should be and could be and once were. So do we have any questions out there from anyone?
And Casey, I was just going to mention, there is a Feed Howard County and a Feed Prince George's that started after us. And so we worked with both of them to get them going. So if you need connections from those counties, I'd be happy to put you in contact with the leaders of those organizations.
That's awesome. I love that idea so much.
It's easy. It's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but I also if any questions come in, we can hit, but we can just kind of recap a little bit. So, or touch on a little more. So you had mentioned the other day that the community garden wasn't just going to be in those little free, I'll call them little free produce libraries, but that also anybody strolling by, it's like, need a piece, grab a piece.
In fact, the other day I went on Facebook. I'm like, my collard greens are out of control. Please come and take some, right? Like I can only make so much with collard greens, guys. And that happens, I think, to all local gardeners, right? And it's something that, I actually have gardeners in the area last year that were coming and going, please take my squash. So I think that that's something that there is an organization in Anne Arundel County, and right now they just do like canned goods and stuff in theirs. So we've been chatting with them about how they do their caring. It's called a caring cupboard. So they have theirs outside. So we've been talking a little bit about how to make sure that they're not going to get eaten by squirrels, things like that. But yeah, I love that idea. I love the idea of putting them all over the county and having people be able to get whatever they need wherever they are.
I think that's an amazing idea. I definitely, I used to live next door to somebody who had cherry tomatoes growing outside, and just walking by, even my son, he's 4 years old. He's like,
yep, they're so good.
Yeah, just
so good.
Polishing, little kid polishing his little cherry tomato on his shirt.
Delicious.
But that's all those little pieces, right? That are, when people talk about Mediterranean diets and things like that, that little grab a handful of something as you walk by is such a lost thing in America, and it's such a beautiful piece. And so I know we're wrapping up. I can see we've got folks joining us, but I want you to know, Monica, just from me and from somebody who has done things like this for a long time in restaurants, you are very much an inspiration. It's been wonderful talking to you and looking at things that I can now take back to my world and use to kind of spread the community idea and really continue to grow food outreach and food sovereignty and keep working to break down the walls. So truly, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here with me, and thank you for being such an inspiration on all of this.
Thank you, Casey. I have really enjoyed working with you over the last week or so, and look forward to seeing you tomorrow for some of these yummy things.
I'm going to crush them.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Monica and Casey. That was wonderful.
Thank you so much. That was such a great end to our first day. Yeah, you guys can, if you just click leave, then...
I'm sorry, we did have one quick question for Monica. I'm sorry, I totally missed this one. So I know, Amy, this came from you. The best way to store lion's mane and whether it can be foraged locally. I am so sorry I missed that. I was hitting the wrong chat.
Oh, now we can't hear Monica.
Amy, we can...
Okay. I was going to say, I actually was foraging. I just started foraging during the pandemic, like so many others, and had a lot of success last year finding hen of the woods or maitake mushrooms. And lots of people find lion's mane locally. I have yet to find them. But yes, they grow sometimes low, sometimes higher in trees. If you Google it, you'll find some information about the best places to look. Storing them, I keep mine in a brown paper bag inside the refrigerator. And once they start to yellow, you probably want to just not eat that. It's going to be a little bit bitter.
So it's okay. Is it okay? The ones I bought are kind of pink. That's fine?
Oh, that's fine. They actually have pink. In fact, Andy grows the pink ones too. So that just might be the type that you purchased.
And I had one more question. I want to know how people can volunteer to help feed Anne Arundel.
So the best way to help is really to reach out to some of the local leaders who run food distributions in your community. They're the ones that are going to be using or giving those meals out and assembling everything at the food distributions. Those are the folks that really need the help. Most of the time with the restaurants, as much as I'm like, come on, help me out, really it's more like delivery and who wants to do that. So what I would recommend is reaching out to your local food bank or reaching out to some of your local churches or community organizations that lead food distributions and see if you can lend a hand there.
Thanks.
Thank you.
That is thanks to everyone.
Thank you, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
So what a wonderful way for us to wrap up day one. We just had such amazing sessions, speakers. We had a lot of great events. Let me go ahead. I mean, we do have a survey that we're going to want to share, but we couldn't be in every session, and we just wanted to kind of even hit on a little bit of like some of the things we did here today.